In the headlines tonight, the government plans to mandate cameras and e-payments for taxis within the next 2 years. Syrians wake up to an uncertain future after a rebellion forces President Bashar al-Assad to flee to Moscow. And Hong Kong stocks stage their biggest rally in 7 weeks as Beijing plans to ease monetary policies. Transport officials have proposed new regulations requiring taxis in the city to install surveillance cameras by 2026 and electronic payment systems by next year. The move is aimed to enhance service quality and combat misconduct among taxi drivers. According to official documents, the cameras must be able to capture clear images and audio of the driver and all passengers both day and night. Taxis will also need to have dash cams to document road conditions and incidents, along with global positioning systems for accurate tracking and law enforcement purposes. Recorded data must be stored on the device for at least 30 days and linked to a central server. Access to the recordings will be restricted to authorized personnel in specific circumstances, such as investigations or when gathering evidence of alleged illegal activities. Additionally, the proposal suggests that all taxis should offer at least 2 electronic payment methods, including both QR code and non-QR code options. Transport officials announced that the legal amendments would be presented in the second quarter of next year. One taxi driver commented that instead of implementing these complicated measures, authorities should increase penalties for illegal behavior, even suggesting that offenders should face imprisonment. Another driver said that installing monitoring devices is beneficial because they provide concrete evidence when either the driver makes a mistake or when passengers are at fault. Jeremy Zhu, Cable News.
Cyberport's Artificial Intelligence Supercomputing Center made its debut today. At the opening ceremony, Technology Minister Sun Dong highlighted its significance as a major milestone, stressing its role in advancing AI development in Hong Kong. The computing power is expected to reach 3,000 petaflops next year, equivalent to a quadrillion operations per second. Along with the launch of the Tech Hub's AI laboratory, Sun said the government aims to boost Hong Kong's innovation ecosystem, encouraging industries to elevate their innovation efforts and to nurture more talent. Separately, the government's $3 billion AI subsidy scheme, initiated in October, has attracted over 10 applications from local academic institutions, startups, and research institutions. The projects are expected to kick off once applications are reviewed. In a discussion by the Legislative Council's panel on welfare services, lawmakers raised concerns over the government's ability to ensure service quality in mainland nursing homes where some Hong Kongers have decided to retire. Take Chi Yun of the Social Welfare Constituency said without long-term monitoring, the government is disregarding the well-being of elders. Undersecretary for Labour and Welfare Ho Kai Ming brushed aside the claim as a misconception, clarifying that his recent visit to care homes in Guangdong revealed high transparency and comprehensive facilities. He added that despite adhering to mainland policies, the government intends to conduct regular monitoring visits and spot checks to oversee the situation. In a bid to ease the burden of medical expenses for elders, the government will be sharing their medical costs, offering up to 10,000 yuan per person annually for outpatient services and 30,000 yuan for inpatient services. This initiative is slated for the latter half of next year, spanning a 2-year period. Till October, over 280 elderly residents, mostly aged 80 or above, have shifted to 4 nursing homes in Guangdong under the scheme. The total number of care homes covered under the scheme has expanded to 11 across 5 cities in the Greater Bay Area. Cheryl Yun, Cable News. People living in the Syrian capital Damascus woke up to the sound of celebratory gunfire. Despite the hustle and bustle of the traffic and the gunfire, many in the country are skeptical as the country drifted into political turmoil. After the toppling of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, who ruled the country with an iron fist, Syrians ransacked his homes and palaces, gaining an insight into his luxurious lifestyle. Following 13 years of civil war and more than 50 years of brutal dictatorship, some Syrians said it was like a dream to remove Assad from ruling and hope the country is moving towards democracy. Some even said they can now actually breathe. Upon seizing the capital unopposed, rebel forces freed inmates from one of the notorious prisons, where thousands were said to be tortured and killed. 59-year-old Assad reportedly fled to Russia after Moscow granted asylum to him and his family out of humanitarian considerations. Assad's removal was welcomed at home and abroad, as world leaders sought to take stock of a new-look Middle East.
The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. The upshot for all this is, for the first time ever, neither Russia nor Iran nor Hezbollah could defend this abhorrent regime in Syria.
With rebels led by Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham now in control, the future of the war-ravaged country remains uncertain, as the group has been designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the U.S. Iran, which supported the Assad regime, warned of possible civil war, which could disintegrate Syria and turn it into a shelter for terrorists. The United Nations Security Council plans to hold an emergency consultation on Syria later today, while Beijing called for a political solution to be found in Syria as soon as possible to restore stability and order. Anna Chen, Cable News. The Justice Ministry in South Korea has imposed an overseas travel ban for President Yoon Suk-yeol. The order followed as parliamentary committee passed a bill to appoint a special counsel to investigate treason charges against Yoon over his botched attempt to implement martial law in the country early last week. Meanwhile, the Defense Ministry confirmed that as Commander-in-Chief, Yoon is still in charge of the military. Yoon has remained out of the public eye without releasing any official statements after the National Assembly's failed attempt to impeach him over the weekend. The opposition parties vowed to submit a new impeachment motion against him and vote again as soon as this Saturday. Hours after U.S. President-elect Donald Trump met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris for the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral, Trump wrote on social media that Zelensky would like to make a deal and stop the madness, calling for immediate ceasefire and negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, adding that China can help. Zelensky responded online that peace was not just a piece of paper, but needed guarantees. A spokesman for the Kremlin addressed Trump's comments, saying Moscow was open to talks, but they had to be based on agreements reached in Istanbul in 2022 and on current realities on the battlefield. In an interview with NBC News, Trump was asked how he will end the Ukraine war in 24 hours, as he said during the election campaign. He dodged the question, reiterating that he is trying to end it if he can, but he has not spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin recently.
So you've spoken to President Putin since you've been elected?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything about that because I don't want to do anything that could impede the negotiations, so I don't see it. But,
Trump also said Kyiv should be prepared for less aid from the U.S. Commenting on his plan of additional tariffs on Chinese goods, Trump said he can't guarantee the new tariffs won't raise prices for American consumers. Trump also vowed to issue executive orders to end so-called birthright citizenship and pardon the rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol in 2020. Anna Chen, Cable News.
Hong Kong stocks started the week with major gains after a meeting of the Politburo in Beijing this afternoon, where top leaders plan to loosen monetary policy and expand fiscal spending next year. The late surge saw the Hang Seng Index close above the 20,000-point mark, reaching a one-month high. With a turnover of $206.5 billion, stocks staged their biggest rally in 7 weeks to close 2.8% higher. The shift from a highly regulated to a moderately loose monetary policy marks a major shift in Beijing's stance for the first time in 14 years. The Politburo also emphasized the need to stabilize the real estate market, leading to a significant rebound in stocks of mainland developers. Sunak and Shimao Group both gaining more than 13%. China's consumer price index hit a 5-month low for November, despite recent easing of monetary policy. The key benchmark for measuring inflation rose by just 0.2% last month, down from 0.3% in October, falling short of market expectations. Food prices rose by 1% year-on-year, with the cost of fresh vegetables up 10%, while the price of pork went up 13%. But prices in other sectors declined. Despite the slowdown, the annual inflation rate is predicted to be around 0.4% for this year, with expectations of it exceeding 1% next year. Meanwhile, the producer price index, which reflects cost of manufacturing, saw a narrower decline in November, falling by 2.5%, which was less than anticipated, marking the 26th consecutive month of decline. The National Bureau of Statistics attributed the narrower PPI to coordinated efforts of existing and new policies by the central government, which boosted demand for industrial products.
Five years after it was gutted by a massive fire, the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris reopened its doors to the faithful, holding its first public mass yesterday. (2,500) worshippers packed into the newly renovated cathedral, which is over 1,000 years old. In his opening remarks, Olivier Ribaudo-Dumas, rector of the cathedral, said fire has not conquered stone, despair has not conquered life. Priests offered communion from the new 1,700-pound bronze altar, shaped like a parabola rising upward. The previous one was crushed by a falling beam during the catastrophic fire. Notre Dame's miraculous resurrection was defined by extraordinary craftsmanship, involving some 2,000 workers and an expenditure of more than $700 million. The church, which previously welcomed 12 million visitors annually, is expected to draw 15 million in its new chapter.